Hi, and welcome to this episode of the Retirement Readiness Podcast. Today, we're sitting in the dining room at Smith Crossing here in, is it Orland Park or Tinley Park?
We're Orland Park.
All right, so in Orland Park, about far south of Orland Park as you can get, I think.
Correct, yep.
And with me today is Kevin McGee, President and CEO of Smith, and it's broader than just Smith Crossing. If I remember right, you guys have a couple of campuses?
Yes, that's correct. Yep.
So tell me a little bit about that. So campus here in Orland Park, and where's your other campus?
Sure, so I work for the parent company, Smith Senior Living, and our other campus is in the southwest side of Chicago in the Beverly Morgan Park neighborhood,
Okay.
Smith Village, and we have been around for 98 years as a not-for-profit.
Holy cow.
Yeah.
Now you haven't been CEO that whole time, right?
No, quarter.
but you've been here for a long time. You said just Wednesday you celebrated your...
My 24th anniversary was this past Wednesday.
Good for you.
Yeah, thank you.
So today what we're going to talk about a little bit is, Kevin, hopefully you can give us some insight. As people age in life and they go through retirement, there's times when they start transitioning and start thinking about, should I still stay in my home? Maybe I need some help with some things. And that's kind of your world, right? I mean, that's what Smith's all about.
Yeah, I think senior living has had dramatic changes over the past 5 decades, and I think people used to think of senior living as a nursing home. Well, it's far from what it was 50 years ago. And I always say, as an organization, what we do is we fight social isolation for seniors. A lot of seniors are living at home by themselves. They don't want to cook for themselves anymore. They have a large house that maybe use 15% of the space. And we see that if they come to a community like Smith Crossing or Smith Village, giving up that house is a freeing experience where you're now coming down to a dining room that we sit in right now, and you're eating with other people and making friends, oftentimes renewing friendships that you knew from years ago. And you're putting a plan in place should something happen in the future.
Yeah, well, it's funny you say that. I think about my wife's great-grandmother, so she lived to be 105. And she, up until 99, lived on her own, so she was part of that die-hard crew, I like to stay in my house type of a thing. And you talk about renewing friendships. She ultimately ended up moving into a place where, I don't know what it was called, but she had somebody that lived with her. It was an apartment type of complex, but when she did, she found out that the lady upstairs, she actually went to kindergarten, went from kindergarten through 8th grade, and so here these 200-year-olds are reconnecting,
yep.
And to your point, that social isolation is pretty good, huge. And so give me a little bit of a sense, you talk about how things have changed. So my understanding is that Smith is considered a life plan community. Is that the right term?
Yes, yeah.
And so what does that mean? What does life plan community mean?
Yeah, so a life plan community is you're putting a plan in place for yourself, and it's your plan. We always encourage people to move into one of our communities while they're independent. We have 1 2-bedroom apartments or condos, full kitchens. A lot of our apartments have 2 full bathrooms. We build these beautiful kitchens, but very few people use it, ironically. But the idea being that if you need care in the future, you already put a plan in place, because at Smith Crossing and Smith Village, we have independent living, assisted living, memory support care, skilled care, and rehab. So if you need any of those services, you have a plan in place. And I always like to say it's your plan. So often people decide to stay in their house longer than they should, and an emergency takes place. Now you have the adult child flying in from another part of the country, trying to put a plan in place, and now it's their plan, And we've been around for almost 100 years. We have established relationships with hospitals. So someone goes to the hospital, they see Smith Crossing, Smith Village, they know who to call over to the campus to get that plan in place, and maybe you need rehab for 2 weeks, and then your friends can come over and visit you. And the idea is always to get you back to independent living.
Yeah. Well, and as we think about that, one of the things I was hoping to accomplish in our conversation today is people start to age, or even as they enter retirement, one of the big things on their mind is, what if this happens, right? And so help me to understand, how is it that I start going about that process? Because it seems like anymore, my unknowing eye, I drive by and I see a Smith and I see a Evergreen, right? See, whatever the name is out in front, and it seems like they're popping up all over the place. Are all places this life plan community where they offer all these services? Is it not? Like, what's the difference there? And if you could unwrap that a little bit.
Yeah, there's a lot more choice than there was in the past. The baby boomers are coming up, and I think the industry is preparing for it. We are unique in that we are a life plan community where a lot of our competitors are not, and it's important to differentiate between the two. A lot of places are just independent living or just assisted living, and if you need more care, you have to leave. There's also a differentiator for us is that we're a not-for-profit organization.
So wait a minute, real quick, before I think about that. So go past that, when you talk about if you need different care, you have to leave.
Yeah.
What does that mean? So if I'm going out, let's say I'm thinking about maybe for myself or for mom or dad, probably, right? I'm going to help mom or dad put together this plan, and I'm stopping at these different places. What does it mean? Like, if they have to leave, what did you mean when you said that?
Sure, no one likes to think of the what-if scenarios, but you have to. So, God forbid you have a devastating stroke, or you have a progressive disease of Parkinson's or Alzheimer's. The other set of communities are just to take care of you or provide services while you're independent, or assisted living, which is limited amount of care they can give based on their licensure. Well, here, the whole life plan community has all the services under one umbrella.
Okay.
So again, you're part of the community. Hopefully your family knows us. That we know the resident, of course. The other campuses oftentimes will call and say, mom has had a certain health situation that the community can't handle, and we also oftentimes say, well, we don't have room because we've already made a commitment to our own residents who moved into independent living. So we made a commitment to our residents that if they need more services, they get priority.
And so when you say that, what does that mean? So if I came in and moved into your independent living, are you saying that no matter what, I can stay here, kind of thing? I mean, is that the idea?
That's the idea. Yeah. So
no matter what might be a hard term, but I mean,
correct,
but is that kind of the concept?
I mean, there's certain things we couldn't provide, ventilator support, things like that. But that's really on the outlier.
Sure.
But yeah, and as a not-for-profit, we make a commitment that if you move in and say you outlive your resources, we won't ask you to leave. That's another differentiator to ask when you're looking at other communities. Now we do, of course, have to financially qualify people because we can't just take everybody in. But it's a peace of mind for the resident and their family to know, people are living a lot longer than they were 20 years ago.
For sure.
They have to run out of resources. They won't have to leave, and it's part of our mission.
And so that kind of opens up all kinds of questions in my mind. So when I hear that, it makes me feel like, am I going to be signing up for a place that is like super expensive compared to everybody else out there? Are there like tiers? I think about when I go to, use travel as the example, if I go to a hotel, I could find the place that charges $39 a night and I get an experience, and I can try to find a place that charges $300 a night and I get a different experience. So how does all that work in this world?
So for the life plan community for independent living, people do put an entrance fee down. It's a one-time entrance fee, and it's based off the 5-mile radius of the housing market. But at Smith Crossing, we have about 15 different floor plans. So those floor plans come with a different entrance fee and monthly fee.
Okay.
The larger the square footage, the higher the entrance fee and the monthly service fee.
Sure.
So if somebody wants to save on some of their resources, then they could choose a smaller apartment.
And so when you talk about kind of monthly fees and that kind of stuff, what does that get me? I mean, is that just the right to be here, kind of like a country club membership, or is how does that work?
Sure. So your monthly fees include all your utilities, housekeeping twice a week, your activities, you get a continental breakfast every day, and then you're allowed a certain amount of dining points every quarter, every 3 months. And you can come down to the dining room to have a real high-end meal, or just an average meal. And you could also invite your family and friends to come with those dining points. Real estate taxes, you're no longer having to pay for repair of a roof or refrigerator goes out. The monthly fee pays for all of that.
Wow, and that's the independent side.
That's independent living.
It's funny, one of the things we talk about a lot with our clients, and as they talk about that, if I heard that and I was 50, I think it's like vacation, right? I'm going to an all-inclusive place where I get food and I get some activities and I get all that stuff. but sometimes there's trepidation when people start thinking about, I'm making a move, even though I get all that stuff. What's your experience there? I mean, are people realizing that this isn't your grandma and grandpa's nursing home, that this is what does that look like, Kevin?
Quite often we hear people say, I wish we did this sooner. And being an organization that's been around for almost 100 years, we're actually serving second generation families.
Oh, wow.
So, and I am one of them. My parents live at our other campus, and my grandmother was a resident at the other campus years ago. So it's kind of fun to see, being here so long, the different generations coming through. Obviously, when people come through today, they see a different building, they see more choices, and they also see the peace of mind that my parents gave to me and my siblings about having a plan in place, like my grandmother did for my parents when she moved in.
Yeah.
So it takes a lot of, and I'm the youngest of 5, and so everyone has an opinion if there's an emergency, right?
Yep.
But now my parents put their plan in place.
Well, and it's funny, we've got, Katie is who usually co-hosts with us, and we tell her she's the youngest of the 4 in our family, and we tell her, you know what? Whatever happens with mom, she's all yours. And so and
and I'm the youngest too.
Yeah, exactly. That's why I thought about it. So you're smart to put that plan in place with your folks. And so we talked a little bit about the independent side. What happens if my health does start to change, or that kind of stuff? So what does that progression look like? Is that something that once I move in, now you guys are in charge of my care? Like, you tell me where I'm going, or do I have some choice in it? What does all that look like?
Yeah, no, we like to work with residents and their family members. When healthcare needs arise, sometimes having a large apartment, maybe it's quite a distance from the dining room, so it's harder to navigate. And I always say assisted living is like independent living on a smaller scale with services in place.
Okay.
So in assisted living, we have CNAs on staff 24 hours a day. We have nurses on site 12 hours a day. They can help with medication management, bathing. Meals are now 3 times a day because you have more of a kitchenette. So again, it's just independent living on a smaller scale with more services, and you're still part of the community.
Okay. Well, and as we've been sitting here, we've got all kinds of stuff that I keep hearing it. So this is not like a dead place where at all, like where nothing going on, right? And
Absolutely.
So tell me a little bit about what are those activities, or how active of a community?
We have bus trips. We have entertainers that come in once or twice a month to provide entertainment in our community hall. We have a very active group of residents. They have their own drama club.
Oh, really?
Yeah, and that's a lot of fun, and they put on musicals. They take ownership of the programming, which is a lot of fun. And then we try to bring the community in from the outside. So we have different schools that'll come in and perform. And you can be as busy or not as you choose. So we want to respect people's privacy, but we see a lot of people come out for all the programming.
Yeah, I tell a lot of people, I remember when my grandma had gone into an assisted living facility, right before she did, she had Parkinson's, and right before she did, my dad and I both, she was on the kind of this really downward spiral, and we both thought that it was not good, it was kind of short, but there was, to her life, and there were times though, something about being in that community, you talked about that isolation, there's something about coming in and knocking on the door, hey Florence, you want to go play cards, and hey Florence, let's go to dinner type of stuff. She was there 13 years.
13 years.
13 years. She was the longest living resident longest resident that they had, which I'm so thankful for, because from our perspective, it meant every one of my kids got to know great grandma Becker. And so it was a blessing for us, something that at the outset we thought was going to be not a good thing, really ended up being such a blessing long term. And so give me a sense then, Kevin, if I'm starting to think like I need to put this life plan in place, when's the right time to do that? I mean, what age do you see, or what physical characteristics, about when should people start thinking, how do I put that plan together? Sure,
everyone's situation is unique. I would say, if you're in your 70s, start thinking about what your future is going to be. If you have children, it seems like a lot of kids, instead of living close by, are now, moving to different cities. So again, I keep going back to what is your plan? And as we discussed, there's a lot of competition out there. Our organization, we have marketing events almost every month. And so we have different topics, whether it's successful, healthy aging, or how to downsize. go on our website or other websites to see what they're offering, and go in and get a sense of the community. It's important to know, do you feel comfortable? Is this part of your plan?
So that's a good point. So when you talk about kind of these marketing events, so if I'm hearing that correctly, so it's an opportunity for me, a prospective person looking to say, what is my plan going to be?
Absolutely.
And so I get to be on campus and see what it's like and to kick the tires a little bit,
Exactly.
if you will.
Yeah. And oftentimes people will bring one of their children to one of the events as well. And then after whatever the topic is, oftentimes we'll have a meal in our dining room. So we can sit and, they can experience our dining program, and then we try to have staff at every table, and it allows people to ask questions naturally as they come up over the course of a meal.
Sure. And so is there a cost if I wanted to do something like that? Is that just something for me so that I can make a better informed decision? How does that work?
Yeah, there's no cost, at least for our organization. The topic is an invitation. Again, it's on our website. We just ask people to register. So we can accommodate the number of people coming, and then there's no cost to the meal. It's good for both us and for the prospective resident.
For sure. And so give me a little bit of a sense. So I kind of get this life plan idea put together, and I know what I want to do. Let's say I'm 75 and I'm super healthy. I'm not ready to do this. I'm still traveling and doing all that kind of stuff. What do I do then? Do I tell my kids, hey, I like Smith. If something happens, let's go there? Or do you actually talk to Smith and have a conversation? What does that look like?
Yeah, so we have a sales counselor, and as I mentioned, at the Smith Crossing campus, we have about 15 floor plans. So I would encourage, as you go down this road and consider a life plan community, pick out an apartment floor plan that is interest to you. Build a relationship with the sales counselor and the community. And we're seeing younger people moving into our communities as well, especially coming out of COVID.
Sure.
We were a very safe place, and services were brought to them. They didn't have to feel like they were at the grocery store, and we had all the services put in place when something like that happened.
For sure. Okay. And so one of the biggest things that would be on my mind that I hear our clients talk about is there's no way I could afford it.
Yeah.
And as we see what people are doing and the people that have made that step and how they can potentially afford it, sometimes the hurdle is, I don't think there's any way I can afford it. I don't know if I want to do that. How does that work? So if you could kind of compare and contrast, you might not know what other places are doing, but what's typical? I know, give us what Smith does, but then kind of is that typical across the industry, or what's your experience with that?
Yeah, so our organization, for the entrance fees, as I mentioned, for independent living, they're based off of the housing values in a 5-mile primary market radius. So we hear oftentimes, to your point, oh, I can't afford this. And when you realize the asset you have in your home, and then the resources you have for your retirement, sometimes people find out that it's basically a wash between running a house, buying groceries, utilities, property taxes, maintenance on a house. Oftentimes they're spending in cable, internet, telephone. A lot of times you're paying for miscellaneous expenses you never realize you're paying every month.
Sure.
So our sales counselor has a sheet that you can go through and add your monthly expenses and compare to our monthly service fee. But I always say you can't put a price on the peace of mind by putting a plan in place.
Sure. And is that, so if I come in to Smith, you said I'm here, right? Like whether for the most part, no matter what my health does, and the commitment around we'll keep you here even if you run out of resources. How's that possible? And how do you make sure that I've got enough resources before I come in? All that kind of stuff. Like how does that work?
Yeah, as mentioned, we are a not-for-profit, so we're not looking to make a profit to a stockholder. I report to a board of trustees who take their fiduciary responsibility very serious. And we also recognize we can't just bring everybody in. So we work with an actuarial model, and it's based on the person's age and their monthly income and their assets to see, what is the potential that we would be providing resources if they were to spend their resources down. So we work with people, and everyone's situation is different, again, based on their age and income and things like that. But yeah.
And is there, if I heard correctly, is there like a charitable fund or something that is your backup that says, hey, if something happens here that we do have resources, or there's a way that we can help make sure that person can
Yeah, and as a not-for-profit, we feel we are obligated to give back to the community. So if people run out of resources, and I don't want people to think, oh, if I move into life banking, I'm going to run out of money. That rarely happens.
Sure.
But as a not-for-profit, we have to give back to the greater community, and as such, we would not ask people to leave. So we manage our resources to try to predict, if people run out of resources, that we could still manage them and provide the services that they've always experienced with us.
Cool. And one thing that is a very common question that I get, and maybe you can help me to understand or help to explain a little bit better. Many times the people that will come in, because literally that's their biggest concern. Their biggest concern is how much is it going to cost? I'm running out of money. Many times people don't realize that you're okay. This is going to work out okay. All that kind of stuff.
More often than not.
Yeah, and a lot of times they'll come in and they'll say, well, I don't want to take, they're going to take all my money. And their concept is, if I go in, I'm like signing a blank check that says, everything I've got is now yours. But from what I'm hearing, the independence continues on your money and all that kind of stuff.
Oh, yeah.
I mean,
Absolutely, yeah. No, we're not taking resources, no. Yeah, again, there's an entrance fee, a one-time fee, and then there's a monthly fee that we have ongoing.
Cool. Well, Kevin, thank you very much. This was really enjoyable for me.
My pleasure.
Thanks for hosting us. Thanks for joining us on this episode of the Retirement Readiness Podcast. If you found anything helpful here, please subscribe to the channel. Like us on Facebook, follow us, and until we meet again, we hope we can help you live your legacy with confidence. Be well.